Hello and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you for joining us for another Power Pack message of our series, Untold Stories from Rwanda. Guys, this is an amazing day, and I want to give you welcome to all of you from wherever it is that you're watching or listening to this broadcast. And we are going to go back to our roots in Rwanda. And in our stories, our journey, our survival, and our resilience, we have another Power Pack message today, the one that you have never heard of from this network, HMG. And it is none other than our story from our beloved Queen, Beatrice Gatebuke. She's going to be telling her of the Queen, Beatrice Gatebuke. She's going to be telling her story growing up in Rwanda, a disrupted childhood that includes surviving the genocide of Rwanda. And with that in mind, before I actually give it all up, I want to make sure that I give a huge welcome to my brother that we are going to be co-hosting this conversation with, so he may get a chance to say hello to all of you guys. And before I give him a huge welcome, I just want you to tell all those of you listening and watching us from the social media, just in case you lose any connection, make sure that you go back to our main HMG network or Aglan main page. You guys should be able to follow the conversation without any problems. Those of you watching us from the television or radio station, you should not have any problem as far as those technical directives, so to speak. So with that in mind, my brother Claude Gatebuke, how are you? If you can hear me, I'd like you to go ahead and give us a huge shout out and let us know that you can hear us so we can get right in it. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Good morning, Freeman. Thank you for having me. It's a great honor today that the story that we get to hear today is my sister's story. And interestingly enough, I don't actually know, her whole story as much as, for a long time I've assumed that I knew her story. But today I'm going to be co-hosting her with you, and we're going to be listening to things and stories that we haven't heard before. I'm sure you thought you might know the story also, but there's a lot more to her story than we actually knew. So I'm really excited, and I'm excited for the audience. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank our sponsors, Friends of the Congo, the African Great Lakes Action Network, Black Star News, and HMG Studio, which is this platform. And I ask every one of you that's watching, please share the links, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. And those at home, please invite your neighbor to come and watch this with you. The structure of the conversation today is gonna be a conversation with myself, Freeman, and my sister, Beatrice. And in the conversation, after we go through the interview, you in the audience will have an opportunity to interact with her. So while you watch this, go ahead and send your questions and comments, and Beatrice will get to interact with you. So without further ado, Freeman, I do want to turn it back over to you, and we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe you can introduce our guest versus me introducing my sister.
It is just a pleasure that I can do that. But just before I get to the Queen, and by the way, guys, before we use the word the Queen, I used to call her the Queen. I just want you to know. And you'll get to see her. You get to see her in a minute. I know it's funny because right now in our broadcast in Kenya, Rwanda, that name, a queen and a king, it's such a very priceless name that we actually have and that we use on a daily basis. But back in the days, when I say back in the days, she is the queen that I used to know when we were still young. And you can imagine how back we go. And it's incredible because most of us guys, you think that we just met today because we do a lot of this word. But that's not what it is. But Claude, before I introduce our queen, you mentioned something that I thought that it was maybe it was my microphone or my earpiece that wasn't going, right, you say that you actually don't know the story of your own sister. Is that what you say, Claude?
I thought I knew. That's what I'm saying. I thought I knew, but I actually am discovering that I don't know a lot of, there's a lot to her story that I don't know, especially things that we lived through in Rwanda. So that's what she's going to be sharing with the audience.
My goodness. So today, I guess it's gonna be one of those really super power pack conversation. And before we jump right in it, guys, I also want to put a disclaimer here that when we are together as, because really when we're having this conversation, for me, it is as if we like family. I want you guys to know that. And if we make any jokes, something that you guys might not necessarily be expecting on air, just know that right now we just get ready to jump into our little family craziness. But since we are honoring the Queen, I want to make sure that we do it proper before we embarrass ourselves and before she kicks us out. And as I was saying, she was the Queen before we started openly telling everybody that they are Queen. That's how I remember her. And we go really way back. So who is the Queen, Beatrice? I'll let you guys know, for those of you who really don't know, our dear sister, our Queen. Her name is also Gatebuke. I just want y'all to know. So just so that you're not going to say that I didn't say so. So her name is Beatrice Gatebuke. She's a graduate from Northwestern University and a Rwandan genocide survivor. And sometimes there's this organization in Rwanda. Actually, it's been dismantled. They used to say that the genocide is only attributed to the very few. And most of us don't fit the bill. But I just want you to know that she's also a Rwandan genocide survivor in her own right as well. She has initiated community initiatives and serves various nonprofit organizations committed to improving local and international lives. She's the real deal, guys. And Ms. Gatebuke's story was featured in the Nashville Public Television's Next Door Neighbor New Beginning programs. Those of you in Nashville, I call it Cashville. I do believe that you have seen that story coming through. And if you haven't, check it out on demand. I do believe that most of you guys, especially those of you who watch us on cables, you should be able to go way back to the stories that they keep on demand, and we are super grateful for that. And she dedicates her time to contributing to the betterment of the world. She has appeared on local televisions and newspaper. On one of her conversation, most of her conversation can be found at the Library of Congress here in the United States. And guys, there is no better way to introduce the Queen herself. She's large. She's large than life. And this little intro that we are doing right now, it doesn't really do justice, but I do know that she's the Queen in her own right. And without any further ado, I really would love it very much that we bring our Queen in. If you guys can put the camera right on her so she can be able to say hello to kings and queens all over. And then I'll give it back to my brother, Claude Gatebuke, as we jump right in.
Good morning, everybody. Very excited to be here and glad to be having this conversation and looking forward to, sharing my story and enlighten you guys on what I actually experienced during the time of the genocide in Rwanda and my life after that. It's a very powerful story, and I am excited to be sharing it. And thank you, Freeman, for that introduction. Thank you so much, and thank you, Claude, for taking the time to have this conversation with me. It's been a long time coming, and I'm looking forward to having a good conversation, and hopefully you guys in the audience will learn something new today.
My God.
Well,
I'm super excited, really, really excited. And Claude, I want to give it back to you just momentarily because I don't want to, jump right in. It is so much that I really want to talk about and get into. But I promise I'm going to behave myself today because, guys, I'm not even going to kill you. Do you know that I haven't spoken to this queen in so many years? And we live in the same nation, same country. But I'm super excited that we are actually talking our lives, the deep lives that we do share. And for those of you guys who we used to hang out 20 years ago, back in them days, y'all know who you are. I want you guys to come and challenge our queen real time. Especially, I do believe we do have we do have. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if we have Zoom in, but I do believe that you can actually interact in real life. In real time from Facebook and from Facebook and YouTube, I do believe. Is that right, guys? Yes, but I'm not sure if Zoom is available. But I do believe at least from Facebook and YouTube we can interact. So without any further ado, my brother Claude, take it away and let's get started with it.
All right. So let's before we start the story, I do want to give a little bit of background. And I'm seeing, people and some familiar faces in the audience, so Gloria, Delphine, Patrick Bugaba, and a few others. And greetings to every one of you that's in the Janti, Eugenie, Pacifique, and a number of you others, Odette, Mekatete, with the chapatis. Thank you. But yes, this is a hangout, Freeman. As you know, we've done this for years. Today, though, I want to give a little bit of background of how did she end up surviving a genocide? Where did the genocide come from in Rwanda? What happened leading up to the genocide? So Rwanda is a very small country in Central Africa. It's surrounded by 4 countries: Congo, Uganda, Tanzania, and Burundi. In order to find Rwanda, you either got to look for Tanzania or Congo, because Rwanda is a very small country. It's very well known for the story of the genocide. And that story of the genocide is mostly told, or is mostly known through the film Hotel Rwanda. The film Hotel Rwanda is about a man, Paul Rusesabagina, who sheltered over 1,200 people in a hotel and those people and saved their lives. However, today he's going through a really hard time because the government of Rwanda has turned around and abducted him. It's been a year now, a little bit over a year. Took him to Rwanda, put him through a sham trial, and has now imprisoned him for 25 years. This is the person that saved 1,200 lives. And as you hear the story, you'll hear so many other people that did the same type of acts as Paul Rusesabagina. The other thing that Rwanda is known for, so it is the genocide, it's the mountain gorillas, one of the few countries that still have the mountain gorillas. However, the background of the genocide is, started with historical grievances between, political grievances between the rulers of Rwanda and the population, usually on the basis of ethnicity, where the country was led on the basis of ethnicity, going way back before colonialism, throughout colonialism, and then led up to a war in 1990 by exiled Rwandans who were part of the Uganda military, who started a war in 1990. We were kids when this war started. And when they started this war, the war went on for 4 years. They killed so many people in the northern part of Rwanda where this war started. Many people were called to meetings. Hundreds of people were called to meetings. Thousands of people called to meetings. And they would surround them, throw grenades into crowds, kill people with hand weapons. There is a famous weapon known as agafuni, which is a small hole, a gardening hole that they used to bash people's heads in. There were so many massacres during that time. So for those 4 years, I just want to give you a quick summary. There was this war. There was this displacement of people. Over 1 million people in the space of 3 years fled the northern part of the country where the war was and the atrocities were taking place. And so to give you perspective, if it was in America, we have 330 million people. That would be 30 million Americans or more, 40 or 50, every Black person in America, if you took them and moved them to one city in the space of 3 years. Or if we use a different part of the world, just take 10% of the population or more than 10% of the population, 15% of the population, move them to one city in the space of 3 years. That's one of the things that happened. There was widespread, there was weapons all over the place, all over the country, that as a kid, it was cheaper for me to buy a grenade than it would have been for me to buy a loaf of bread or a bottle of soda. There was also political assassinations. Multiple politicians were assassinated during that period. And when that happened, after each assassination, there were riots and massacres. There was also political riots from the various political parties that operated in the country. And many times when we went to school as kids, we didn't know that we would make it back. These were all effects of this war. On top of that, normal crime that would happen, like robberies and things like that, started happening with people using these war weapons. And so you've got all of these things happening. And then there was tension rising between the two main ethnic groups of Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis. And it all came to a head when the president of Rwanda was assassinated on April 6, 1994. To explain, the rebel group that was fighting the government at the time is the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front. That's the party in power today, led by Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame. This is the group that was committing the atrocities that I talked about in the northern part of the country, where people called to meetings and killed in masses. And then by the time 1994 happened, there was a peace deal that was in progress. So they shot the president in the middle of an agreement over peace deal. And when he was shot, everything went to chaos. And that's where we want to start the story that Beatrice is sharing today. Freeman, back over to you.
Man. Claude, when you're breaking this down, it makes me want to just grab some popcorn and, and just listening in. My beloved, my Queen Bee. I really want to give you a huge welcome to HMG, but also saying that it's our father Shaka. He used to say that I'm exceedingly happy and humbled to have hosted you today, and I really want to borrow that from him. And I know that it's not our signature, and I know Claude and I sometimes we do say that it's really a privilege, B. It's such a privilege to have you today, as we talk to our brothers and sisters all over, but also as we support you to tell your story, to write your own story in your own way, without anybody telling you to remove one single letter, and nobody telling you how and when and how to position your story to tell your ordeals and all of that. So I'm super grateful. I'm super happy that we are hanging out today, and we get ready to tell your story. And before we jump right in it, Claude has really spit the beans, but we're just gonna have to try the best and put it back together. Can you tell us about your disrupted childhood, now that Claude has pretty much, spit the beans of the background about it? What happened, B?
Yeah, so I'm going to start the story from the evening of April 6, 1994. And we were at home. It was me, my sister, and my brother, and my mother. My father was in the United States at the time. So it was the four of us at home, and we got a phone call, and the person on the phone told us that the president's plane had been shot down. And then my mother was the one who answered the call. She got off the call. She told us the news. And as a young person at that time, I couldn't comprehend what that meant for the country, but I was soon going to find out. So that night, I think Claude was was actually watching soccer that time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the comments, what was the comment you made when Mom told us?
When mom said that they shot the plane, I was like, Mama, I hope the president didn't die, because all the assassinations had led to like massacres, and they shut down school and things like that. We had just finished the soccer tournament. Actually, we just finished the semifinal game of the soccer tournament and going to the final that weekend. And I was like, man, I hope the president didn't die, because if he died, we're not going to be able to finish the soccer tournament.
Yep. So at that time, little did we know our lives were going to change forever. So when we heard the news, everybody had their own reaction to the news. But then soon after that, we started hearing gunshots and people screaming in agony, and things began to escalate. That night, the next morning, when we woke up, we found out that different Tutsi families in the neighborhood had been killed, and different Hutu-Tutsi or Tutsi-Hutu families had also been killed. And then we heard neighbors talking and discussing who else was going to be next. And we were among those families that were going to be next. Nighttime, we would, of course, hide in the storage area, and we would hear the perpetrators' voices discussing when and how they will raid our house and kill all of us. Soon after that, two neighbors came to us and said, hey, they've been trying to kill you guys for a few nights now. It's best that you leave and evacuate your house, because they're going to raid it and they're going to kill all of you. But then those two neighbors said, you know what, we know that you guys can't go anywhere by yourselves, but we're going to help smuggle you guys and take you to another neighbor so that you can shelter there and hide there until everything's settled back down. So whereas like a few nights before, we had been begging my mother to go sleep over at some of our friends' house, now we were having to make decisions about life or death. So they smuggled us out of our house within the first few days of the genocide. They took us to another neighbor, and that neighbor said, you know what, for as long as you're here, nothing is going to happen to you. You can stay here, and I'm going to try my best to shelter you guys. This was a Hutu neighbor, and he took it up on himself to shelter us while we were there.
So I just want to interrupt real quick and just make sure that the audience understands. Many times when we hear the stories of the genocide, we don't hear about the upstanders, the Hutu people who saved the lives of Tutsis. Mostly just the story of coversatio, but there were many people, thousands of people who were saved because of their Hutu neighbors or friends or even strangers intervened. But before you get into, at the neighbors, can you share what happened? Like, I think it was the second day, when you got chased from the street?
Yeah, actually, so that was pretty intense. So, so during that time, all you heard was people wailing, people plotting how to kill other people, or bombs and gunshots, right? And so we had been indoors for a little bit, and it was just a little too much. So I wanted to go and see what was going on outside, maybe get a little bit of sun on my skin, what have you. So I walked to the gate, and when I got to the gate, I just I happened to be standing there, and I looked up one way on the street, and then I heard somebody say, hey, and I turned around, and it was this militiaman pointing a gun at me straight in my eyes. And so I was standing there, and I was like, oh no, I think I'm in trouble. So I took off running. I ran and I hid in the back of the house. And I was, like the only thing I could hear at that time was my heart beating really loudly. But he searched and wasn't able to find me, and eventually left. That was my first time encountering just staring in a gun barrel, and that was very intense and hard for me. So I ran back into the house. I told everybody what happened, and everybody was super concerned. And this actually happened at the neighbor's house. We had been at the neighbor's house for a little bit, waiting to be, just hiding there. And we had been indoors.
There was
and
another incident happened there.
No, this is the same incident, and it happened once we got to the neighbor's house.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep, and while we were there, so what we were told was, you can't be seen and you can't be heard, right? So you have to remain indoors, and you have to speak really quietly. And this is what we did for a long time, or for what seemed like a really long time. While we were at the neighbor's house, things started to escalate. In the neighborhood, the perpetrators raided one house and killed 20 people there. And then soon after that,
did you say
the bomb
20
fell
people
on
were
the
killed?
house right next door and demolished that house, and everybody in the house died. So at this point, we started to realize that things were escalating. And me having gone to the street to look and see what was there, the perpetrators knew where we were hiding now. And so we were now like in much more danger. So the neighbor who was actually sheltering us said, you guys need to leave. We're gonna find a way for you to leave, and we're gonna try to take you to another place that's actually very safe. Or that's much safer than here, because it was becoming really hard for him to keep us sheltered. And also, because he was putting his own life on the line. And so it was becoming very hard. And with all the things that were happening, all the raids that are happening, the bombs that are falling, it's just too much. And he said, you guys have to go, but we'll figure out a way for you to go. So he went and found someone who was headed to the northwest part of the country and asked him if he could take us. And this gentleman, at first he was, he wasn't sure whether he should, because a lot of times, because there were so many checkpoints in the country, a lot of times people would get killed at those checkpoints. And so he wasn't really, he was like, okay, well, I can take them and I will do my best to get them to safety. But just so you know, the roads are really bad, and there are checkpoints everywhere, and, but I'll do my best. And so, we said, okay, we'll go with you. Then the next morning, they told us, hey, you will be leaving tomorrow morning. You will go with this gentleman, and he's going to try to get you to a safe place, and make sure that you guys are okay. So we said, okay. And that is what began the really long road to the northwest part of Rwanda.
And the goal was for us to go to our grandparents, because they are from the northwestern part of the country, close to the Congo, for those of you listening, because the audience is global. So we're leaving central Rwanda, in Kigali, to the northwestern part of the country.
I want to ask a little bit of a question, B, sorry to interrupt, because most people, especially in the West and in Europe, they at times they do not understand the concept of transportation. How were you guys getting around? Because most of us remember, and at times when we say people can't trust, can't even believe it. Were you flying? Were you driving? Were you by foot? Was it a bicycle? How'd you guys move? And how'd you secure your safety on the way out of Kigali?
Okay. Yeah. So from our house to the neighbor, we actually walked.
Did you say walked?
We walked. Yes, we walked. Yeah.
I wanted to know
and
that.
we had to go one by one. We couldn't go as a group, so we had to go one by one. And the two men who were helping us escape actually made sure, and it was actually nighttime. So it was one by one and at night. So as you can imagine, we would send one off, send the next one off, send the next one off, making sure that everybody arrived to the neighbor's house, and it was on foot. But when we were leaving the city of Kigali, we were actually in a small pickup truck, and we were sitting on the back of the pickup truck. So we started driving, and there were a lot of checkpoints. So literally like almost every 100 meters, there was a checkpoint. And as we were making that journey, we would get pulled out of the truck and we would get put to the side, and we would be put in the group of the people that were going to be killed. And in each moment, either somebody would change their mind, or somebody would speak up for us and say, you shouldn't kill these people, they haven't done anything. So we actually, or like like some kind of event would happen and we would make it to the next checkpoint. At one point, when we were driving, we got to one, and they started, they would interrogate the driver. He would say he knows the people he's carrying. And at this one point, they started to tell him for us to come out of the pickup truck and go and sit down. And then a shootout broke out. So there were two warring parties, and they started shooting at each other. And the driver just took off and left the area because everybody took cover. So we kept driving and kept driving. And we would get to many checkpoints that would take us out, they put us to the side, we would wait, they would change their mind, we would get back in the car and we would keep going. But then we came to this one checkpoint, and they said, you guys, that's the group, the would be killed group. You should join that group. And as a matter of fact, even your driver that's driving you needs to go to that group because we're also going to kill him for daring take people to safety. They pointed to an area where there were many dead bodies and said, those are the people that have already been killed. You guys are in that group and we're going to be killing you. So we're sitting there and sat there for what seemed like just many hours. And as we were sitting there, after a long time, a number of cars pulled up with a soldier car in front of it, and that men, so a soldier came out of that car and started talking to the people at that checkpoint. And I don't know what he said to them, but they came over to the group where we were and said, "Okay, you guys can go." So we got back in the pickup truck and kept driving. We kept following the number of cars with the soldier in front of them, and they eventually took one turn, and we had to keep going on our own. And as we were going, we came to one checkpoint that was very, very scary. And when we got to this one checkpoint, they took a look at my mother and they said, "This woman is Tutsi and her children are Tutsi and we're going to kill them." So they pulled my mother out of the truck and they pulled my brother out of the truck. And they said, "We're going to kill you. And look at the shed over there. That shed is full of dead bodies. And we don't want to have to do the work of figuring out where to bury you. So we're going to give you a hoe and some shovels so you can dig your own grave, and that when we finish killing you, we will just throw your bodies in there." And there were women around that kept saying, "Hey, you guys have killed enough people. You've been killing all day. You need to stop. And these people haven't done anything." So you could hear that in the background. But because we had been, me and my sister, we've been taught to not be heard and not be seen, we didn't say anything. We didn't cry. We didn't scream. We just sat there looking at them walk off my mother and my brother over to where the other dead bodies were.
There was also we had a little cousin Diane with us on the truck. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And as so of course, so we're sitting in the back of the truck. We're looking at my mother and my brother literally walking to their death. And in that moment, the driver was so exasperated and he took off driving. And at first we didn't know what he was doing, but this driver, he literally was stopping everybody that he could find on the road and saying, please, please, please. I had people in the truck with me and they are going to kill them. Will you please go speak up on them? Do you know those people? Do you know anybody there? And some people would say, oh, they don't know them. And some people would say, oh, these people have been killing all day and there's no stopping them. But we kept going and he was just going up and down the street and begging anybody. And he was saying, nyamuneka, nyamuneka, narifite abantu mu modoka yanjye. Bagiye kubica, please, muze mumfashe, mujye kumfasha tubareke ntibabice. So we kept doing that. And then somebody said, you know, there's only one man who has been speaking on behalf of people. And maybe if you find him, he's going to be able to come back and say something to them and they won't kill them. So they told him where that man was. We went and found him and we brought him back to the checkpoint where my brother and my mother had been. And while we were there, they hadn't killed him. So we were relieved by that. The gentleman went and started negotiating on behalf of my mother and my brother. And while he was negotiating, they said, you know, your story is not true. What you're saying, you don't know these people, you don't know them from anywhere. We're still gonna kill them. So it doesn't matter what you say, and you can't talk us out of this. We've decided that we're going to kill them. So he tried and tried, and the driver begged. Basically the driver, the guy who was sitting there, the other people that were standing there, they were saying, don't kill these people because they haven't done anything. And the perpetrators were saying we were going to kill them. So then the man decided, he eventually left and we were back with just the perpetrators and the driver trying to figure out how to talk him out of killing my mother and my brother. So then the driver was like, okay, let me go try and find somebody else. So he got back in the truck and we started driving. And by this time it was starting to get dark and we started driving and driving. And we found this one man and he said, you know, I had people in the truck with me and they're about to kill them. Will you please come and go and speak on their behalf and say that, ask them to not be killed. The gentleman said, okay, I will go do it. We took him back to the checkpoint where we were. And this man said, he said, you know, you shouldn't kill these people. I know them. I know the father, I know the mother. They said, well, how do you know them? And he explained, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he explained in those instances how he knew them. And then they said, no, we're still gonna kill them. We're still gonna kill them. And then he looked at them and he said, you know, take a look at this boy and his mother. They're not gonna make it too far from here. They're not gonna make it too far from here. Let somebody else kill them.
Was he referring to Claude?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wanted to say that I'm so grateful to the driver. May his soul rest in peace, because after the genocide, he returned back to Rwanda and they killed him. Mm-hmm. The RPF killed him. And the man who saved our lives, I know he's watching, so thank you, Mr. DG.
Yep. So this man said, you know, this boy, Claude, and his mother, they're going to be killed by somebody else. Just let them go and be killed by somebody else. So those seem to be like really magical words because for whatever reason, that made sense to the perpetrators. And Claude and my mother were back in the truck in a few minutes. At this point, it was dark and not easy for us to continue the journey. So the driver found shelter in the area, but we had to get up really early because if we didn't start our journey really early, we were bound to run into many, many more checkpoints and our lives would continue to be at risk of being killed. So we kept driving, we would run into different checkpoints. And when we were going to go to my grandparents' house, we ran into another family that was coming from the area. And they told us that if we do go to my grandparents' house, we're actually not going to make it because there's so many checkpoints and people have been dying on those checkpoints. So it's best that we continue and go to the city of Gisenyi. So we took a detour and went to the city of Gisenyi. And
Gisenyi is northwest of Rwanda. Again, it's at the border of Rwanda, and Congo. And while I say thank you to so many people, there's also the neighbor who sheltered us, and so many people that looked out for us, while people were hunting us down to kill us. So, everybody, so many of you, it's such a long list. I just want to, again, say thank you, because I can't forget, never forget those who did, such a good and put their lives on the line, really, to save our lives.
Yeah, so our plan had been to go to our grandparents' house, and that road was not safe for us to take, so we continued to the city of Gisenyi instead. And we showed up at a family friend's house unannounced, and said, we need shelter. And we told them all the things that we had gone through, and they said, yeah, you can stay with us. And the gentleman said, hey, things are bad here too, so just stay indoors, don't go anywhere. And he said he would do his best to make sure that we remained in safety. So while we were in that part of the country, things would begin to escalate. Of course, you could see the many more people coming into that part of the country. And you would hear stories of raids where they would raid different families and kill them. They would raid homes, and they would kill everybody at the home. You would also hear of stories of war, of people who had died in the war, and who have lost a lot of members of their families. Then there came a time, because during that time, my mother would get very sick, and she needed medicine. And so they said, B, you're going to be the one to go and to the hospital and get medicine for her. At that point, I told them that I couldn't go by myself. I needed maybe somebody to go with me, because it was such a dangerous time for us. So they gave me two boys, and they said, you guys are gonna be fine. Just don't do anything sudden, and keep going. And if things go bad, just come back. So we walked to the hospital, and when I got to the hospital, it was a scene of something that I had never seen. There were so many people with missing limbs, so many people with missing eyes, people with fresh bruises in the middle of their heads. You could really see the effects of the war and the effects of the genocide. And I mean, people were in so much agony because there weren't enough supplies to be able to take care of the people who were getting hurt. And so some people were wailing, sitting on the floor, and some people were just you could just look at them and see the agony in them. And so we had to walk around all of that and get to the office of the person I was supposed to be finding there, and get the medicine for my mother. When I got there, she gave me the medicine, and we took it back home. But I've never been able to forget that scene of just how bad things were at that hospital. Another story I remember from that time, we initially had running water in the house, but then it would eventually get cut off. And we would have to go down the street to the lake to get water from there and use that water from the lake. So one time, me and another girl, they sent us to go fetch water. It wasn't too far from there. And we went to fetch water, and I had my bucket, she had her bucket, and we had to walk down the rocks and get into the lake. And while we were down in the lake, I dipped my bucket in the water to get some water. And about 2 meters away, a dead body popped up on the top of the water. And I dropped my bucket and almost fell into the water. And immediately I was like, I don't need to be getting this water. I just, grabbed the bucket and went back home with no water, because it was too much for me to handle. It was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. So I came back. And so, at this point, things are escalating fast. There are many more people in the city of Gisenyi. There's there's a constraint on the resources, right? There's barely any food, there's barely any water, and the bombs start falling in the area. And so as the bombs are falling, we start to realize that it is time for us to flee. And so in the big exodus of the people that exited the city of Gisenyi, or the Gisenyi going into Congo, we would be among those people. So we walked over to the border, and where our house was, you could literally see the Congo on the other side. But for us to be able to cross and get into the Congo, it actually took us all day to get to the other side, because there were so many people got trampled on. People died during that time because everybody was pushing to try to get through the border and get to the other side to safety, because there were so many bombs falling. And as we were doing that, so we eventually made it to the other side. And there was a little bit of relief, but also a lot of unknown. We were in a new country. We were effectively homeless, and we didn't have any resources to use and try to navigate the life in Congo. So
I have to say though, the Congolese are very hospitable. I remember they would have like their little spigots with like dripping water, and they would just like let you get it if you could, and they give people like little plots of land and things like that. But keep going. Just wanted to add that part. As hard an adjustment as that was, the Congolese were amazing.
So yeah, as we crossed into the Congo, and we, the full impact of what had happened, we had now escaped the genocide. We had managed to not be bombed. And now we are in a new country. We don't have a home. And so, of course, the three of us looked at my mother like, what do we do now? And so she said, let's keep walking. So we kept walking, and we kept walking, and we kept walking. And as we were walking, the people who had crossed before us were starting to just find like a patch of grass and make that their home. So you could see like people starting to kind of take different patches of grass or buildings that were not fully complete, and just kind of start to make that their home. So we kept walking, and she said, I think I know somebody who lives in this town. Let us see. So at this point, we're in Goma. And, she said, I think I know somebody who lives in this town. Let's go see if we can figure out where his house is, and we're going to ask him for shelter. So we walked and walked and walked and asked around, asked different people, and eventually we found the house. And when we got there were so many people at that house. The house was completely full, and people were starting to settle on the lawn and kind of making that their new home. And so we did the same thing. We found a patch of grass on his lawn, and we said, okay, this is our new home. And so we sat there, and nighttime would come eventually, so at this point we're just there, barely with anything, completely exhausted though, hadn't eaten in a few days. And, we just kind of fell in the grass and went to sleep. The next morning, we, my mother was like, okay, I need to try to figure out what we can eat. I need to try to figure out how we can get out of this situation. And so at this point, during this whole time, we have not spoken to my dad, who is in the United States. So he doesn't know whether we survived, whether we died, or what's going on with us. He has no idea at all. And so, every day, my mom and my brother, they would go and try to figure out how to get food. A lot of times, the people who were sleeping on the grass with us would share their food with us. And then other times my mom would be able to figure out how to get like just a little bit of food. I don't know how she did it. That's something you could probably ask her, but we would find, she would come home with like a little bit of peas and a little bit of rice, and we would share that. Eventually, somebody gave us like a really small pot and a spoon and a cup and a small plate, and that's what we used for whenever we had food to eat at that time. So at this point, during that time, like cholera started, and a lot of people were dying from cholera. It was to the point where, because we slept on the men's lawn, everybody would sleep in a long line. And sometimes when you went to sleep and you got up the next morning, the person right next to you would be dead. So they would take that body, they would haul it off to a place where they dumped all the dead bodies at that time. So things were getting bad there as well. And eventually I would contract cholera and I would get very sick to the point where they would have to carry me to go use the bathroom and bring me back to lay down because I couldn't walk. And during that time, I remember as, it just, for whatever reason, the cholera just, I knew that it was taking many people, but I was hoping that it wouldn't take my life as well. Because, when you think about it and you're like, okay, we've, survived the genocide, we've survived the bombs, we've survived the hunger that, we've had for weeks now. And now I've got cholera and this is what's about to take my life. And so I remember laying there and looking up at the sky and saying, I wonder if there is anybody out there who's not in this situation, who is possibly thinking about us. Because, I thought if I knew of somebody who would be thinking about us, who is not in that situation, I felt like that would give me hope. And in that moment, I thought of my father. And then eventually I would go to sleep. And then when I woke up the next morning, I was like, oh, I'm still here. I didn't die overnight, so I get another day. So that continued, but soon after that, a white American man would show up in the compound with my mother and my brother. And he had a translator. He only spoke English, and they were working through a translator. Me and my sister had been at home because usually
home, right?
Home, right, home, which is, the patch of grass, that was our new home. So we had been home. And so this white American was on a different mission. He was looking for someone. They had helped him.
Can I describe the scene a little bit?
Yeah.
So just so you know what she's describing as home is a small patch of grass where it's probably the size of this couch that we're sitting on. And we were sleeping, for those of you Rwandans who are following, Muzungwaine, that's how we were sleeping. One person's head on one side and the other person's head on the other side. And it was packed. This place was packed. And I saw some people in the audience actually that were in that place. I think I saw Jo. She sent a greeting. She was at that place also. And the place was so crowded. The town of Goma was so crowded with people, but it was also crowded with dead bodies everywhere. I just wanted to just so you know what these kids are looking at, what we're looking at, in the scene. I want to paint the picture. Keep going. So we show up.
Yeah, so they show up and of course, every time they came back, my sister and I would get excited because either they had like a little bit of food to eat, or maybe they could just tell us of, what happened in their day. Because most of our days we were just, they are not doing much, but sitting on the grass and waiting for a miracle. And a miracle would surely happen because after they helped the white man find the people he was looking for, he said, he looked at us and said, well, who are they? And I'm not sure what the gentleman explained to him, but what the translator told us was that he said that he was not going to leave without taking us with him, and that we should pack our belongings and be ready the next day to go with him. And we looked at each other, and of course, we were relieved because we weren't going to be in that chaotic situation anymore. But also when we thought of our belongings, which had been like a small pot, a spoon, a plate, and a cup, we didn't think we had much to pack. So
There's nothing to pack.
There really isn't anything to pack. And so, the next morning we were ready, and this would begin our journey to the US. It will be a while before we get to the US, but he said, I'm going to get you to where I need to get you. And that's how we left the Congo. And things would get really bad for the people that were left behind, but we were getting out of that chaotic situation and starting to be on our way to a new life.
Yeah, and really after we left that place, the town of Goma in Congo itself, which was, there were so many refugee camps that it was like large, sprawling tent cities. And when I say tent, it's not a camping tent. It's tarp. It was basically blue or white tarp everywhere in the refugee camps. And what happened afterwards, the government of Rwanda, which had now been turned over to the RPF, that I referred to earlier, led by Paul Kagame, invaded the Congo and massacred these refugees, indiscriminately killed Congolese. To this day, it's the deadliest conflict since World War II. 6 million people have died since 1996. More than 6 million people have died since 1996 when Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo. And the majority of people who've been killed are children under the age of 5. And those are babies. I mean, think 5, they barely walking and talking. They're just getting started to go to school. That's, a lot of the people who were killed are under the age of 5. And, so we left Rwanda, where the genocide was targeting Tutsis. And then in the Congo, the RPF came and committed a genocide against Hutu people. This is documented in the mapping report, the Congo mapping report, which was released in 2010. And everybody should look at it, look at the recommendations of it, and take action, because justice must be served for everybody, all the Rwandans, all the Congolese, and all the people that were killed in Rwanda and in the Congo. There's a famous doctor, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Denis Mukwege, who is at the forefront right now of the fight to implement the recommendations of this mapping report. I also saw my brother Kambale is following this broadcast, and Kambale Musavuli, a Congolese activist, is one of the brothers that's been pushing really hard. And Freeman, this, you've been, HMG Studio has been supporting this work for so many years, for the last 11 years. And I just want to kick a shout out to Dr. Mukwege, COPAX, Congolese Action for Peace, I think, if I'm not butchering the name, and, Kambale Friends of the Congo, who are the sponsors, one of the sponsors of this broadcast, for all the work that's being done to make sure that all the lives that were taken in the Congo are accounted for, in that there is justice. But we also want to see justice for the people who were killed in Rwanda. Anyway, just wanted to do that quick break and continue with the conversation.
Yeah, before you continue, when you were sharing, it literally took me back. It feels just like yesterday, guys. And some of the things that Bea was saying, especially when she went to, so guys, sometimes the English that we use, it doesn't feel right. So I would have used the word fetch water, okay? Because that's what we would literally do. I used to love that when we would go to our grandpa and grandma. Because at home where we lived, we had water. Just, you just go in the kitchen and you get water. But when you go to our grandparents, they just didn't have the infrastructure, right, where you can have water. And we'd love to do that. But I remember when the war started and when we just didn't have those things we used to take for granted, life just got bitter and it was hard. And you can imagine Beatrice and her friend just have that picture when they just go out there to fetch some water. Fetching means to get some water. For those of you, that's what we would use. And just seeing a body, just a body right in front of you. I can just see that and I feel chills in my body. But I want you guys to know that when you're stuck between a rock and a wall, when you just don't have any more options, I want you to know that people were drinking just that kind of water. Filthy water and unsanitary water. We drank it. I remember there was a point where we just wanted something. And you can imagine just her turning right back with no water. And they needed water. So at some point, they had to go back over there and get that same water with dead bodies in it. And today, I really thank God. Look at her. Look at Beatrice right now. Just look at her. She turned out in the most amazing way. You wonder, like, how do you live under those conditions? But that's what most of us went through. And I know that a lot of you shrinks out here who have seen us, you think like we are grenades ready to go off at any given time. But some of this situation has given us such a higher tolerance and such a high resiliency that I don't even know how to explain it. But when she spoke about that, it just robbed me somewhere that it brought back memories when we were fleeing. And I was like, oh my God. But when I remember when it was a peaceful time, we'd love to do that. But there were no bodies when we went to fetch water. And it wasn't out of a need. It was more like we just wanted to do it because that was the way that the people back in our grandma's place used to get water, you know. And yeah.
When you describe that water, I get sick just thinking about that water. Where in the lake that we used to take drinking water out of, people were showering in it, animals were bathing in it and pooping in there. There was these dead bodies. Yeah. It's like, you know, you just get sick thinking about it, and even just the scene of it.
It just brings me memory, and I can remember it. And it's funny because right now I feel how disgusting it is, and you get to feel those chill body effects within you. But I remember back in those days, it wasn't funny, and you were not thinking about how dirty, how unsanitary. I mean, we could have gotten sick and just dead. We could have attracted all kinds of diseases, but thank God to those situations that most of us, we came out okay, but there are those who just never came out, who literally never made it out. And I'm super grateful that we are here today, and it's one of the reasons why I know it is not because of the goodness of the RPF, which is none. We just had something else greater. We have a bigger destiny. We have such a huge, we're not finished, not just living, but contributing to the entire world, not just the Rwandese community. And that's why when I see Queen Bee right now, as she just shares the most inner sensitive parts of her story, her life, her experience. Guys, this is not a Hollywood script. This is a life that she's sharing with all of you. Especially those of you who have never heard of a real life story from a real life person. I want y'all to just imagine what it was like back in the days. Look at us today. We're not that old. But the day, the hour, the years that she's referring to, it's some time ago. We were first to mature. We just had to mature when we were still children. Especially for female, for girls. Girls had to mature way faster than us, guys. And that's why you see she's much more smarter than us, more disciplined than all of us. I mean, she got the whole pack because what they had to go through. But I thank God that today Beatrice is in a safe environment. She can blossom. She can get the opportunity to even tell her story in a more safe environment, and hopefully inspires some of you to fight against the impunity, fight against those who are still in it today. In 2021, we still have families in Rwanda who are still in forests, who are still living a life like an animal's life. The kind of life Beatrice is literally recounting right now, sharing with you, but even far worse than what it used to be today. So, Bay, I thank God that you were able to come out, and I thank God that the person who actually helped you guys to come out did it in a such time where you just didn't have any hopes for going to further places where there was safety. And I thank God that you were able to meet your dad. And gosh, it's so much.
We haven't gotten to that part of the story.
I know.
We haven't gotten to that part of the story. Maybe we should keep going.
Yeah, please, Bay, tell us what was it like you touching down to the United States. Also, guys, I want you all to know that back in the days, the U.S. I never knew it like the U.S. We just called it America. So when someone in Rwanda, when we say America, we're talking about the States, guys. So what was it like when you guys touched down to America, B?
Let's start before that. And maybe share a little bit of transition, from the Congo, just real quickly, and then getting to America.
Yeah. So there was that. We were very, very grateful in that moment. Because I could feel myself, at least for me, I don't know about my siblings and my mother, I could feel myself starting to give up on life and just, wanting it to all whatever this nightmare was to end. Because of how sick I was and all of that. So when the white men said, I'm going to take you guys and get you out of here and get you to safety, it was a huge sigh of relief for me. But because in the conditions we were living in, some of the things that would happen, we were so dirty because we didn't shower that often because water was scarce. And the area where we were staying was the area where the volcano had erupted and left the really dark rocks. And so that's what we were sleeping on. And so we were very, very, very dirty. And so as we were making our way to safety, the men said, well, you guys look very dirty and we need to get you some place so you can clean up and get you some food. And so literally to shower and clean your body and get all the dirt off took a really long time. You had to wash your body multiple times to get all, because there was coating on the body and stuff. So we did that. And the guy was like, oh, I'm just going to get you guys some food. So he got all of this food for us, not knowing that we hadn't really eaten much for a while there. And of course, we didn't know any better. And we, started eating the food. And, we thought we were going to be okay. And then in the middle of the night, everybody started throwing up. And so the guy was super concerned. He was like, oh my God, I took him out of the terrible conditions. And now, they're about to die because they keep throwing up. So in the middle of the night, they had to find somebody to get us some medicine to kind of help with the throwing up that we were having and all of that stuff. So that was one of the things that happened. And then we would go into Uganda and then eventually into Kenya and then into the United States. And boy, were we in for a treat. On our way to the US, we, most people who have come from another place and came into the US, there's usually cultural adjustment, different cultural contexts that you don't understand and things like that. And so, you have to do that kind of adjustment. But in one of the airports that we're in, I remember we had been traveling, all day, we were super exhausted. And at each airport, we would meet somebody who spoke in English and they would rattle off a lot of stuff. And most of the time we didn't understand it. We just kind of followed suit because we didn't speak that, English at that time. So we get to one airport and there's a gentleman and he comes over to us and he walks us to our next gate and we get there. There's some chairs there and he says all that stuff, we didn't understand that. But what we did have, we had a English to French dictionary, like a really small dictionary. And some words, we would just look them up. So he's like talking and talking and talking, and we have no idea what he's saying, but he points to a place and it, it has the words restroom on it. And so we take the dictionary.
So you're gonna call me out like that, huh? Oh, here we go.
So we took the dictionary, we flipped through, we found the word rest, and then we flipped through, we found the word room. So then we looked at each other and we're like, oh, there must be some beds in that room. So Claude, why don't you go and look and see if there's some beds or maybe some bench for us to sleep in? And Claude, what did you find?
So I guess if you're not American, maybe restroom doesn't, you don't know the words restroom, but restroom in America means, in Europe, they call it toilet. I think, in various places, they call it, different names. But I went there, I was looking, expecting a bed, getting comfortable and everything. It is a place to get comfortable, but it's the restroom. So I came back and I was like, hey, all I saw was toilets. I don't even know if I went into the men's or the women's bathroom. It just said restroom. I went there to see if, we were going to rest. And there was a rest place, not a bed.
And so, of course, we're like, what do you mean there are no beds? But when we looked in the dictionary, it said rest and then a room. And so, that was our first experience of how much cultural adjustment we would have to do. So we left the airport and we got to Nashville. My dad was at the airport, and these were the days where you could actually go to the gate and the people walked off the plane and, you were standing there. And it was such a wonderful moment of relief to like be away from the bombs, the hunger, the homelessness, the threat on our lives. And it just felt really nice to be there, and it felt steady and stable. And we were excited to see him. And so we would go and we moved into the apartment that he had. And it was an apartment across from the projects. And we would live in that space for a long time. And we would have many more cultural adjustments, moment to make. I think one night I was at home. I'm going to tell another one of yours. Oh, your story. So I was at home with my parents and the phone rang. My dad picked it up, and I don't know, the other person said stuff on the phone, and then my dad was being the African dad that he was, and he was like, these kids don't listen. And I was like, ooh, Claude and Alice are in trouble. And he didn't explain. He just went to find them wherever they were. And when they got back home, I said, hey, so what in the world happened? So dad got, a call, and he was all like, these kids don't listen. What did you guys do? And Claude, do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, so we went into, Dad used to take us to a library. So we go to this library, one of the universities here. And, me and my little sister, Alice, wanted to stay. It was walking distance from home. I mean, it was the ghetto, but it didn't really bother us because, we had come from a place much worse. And even today, the ghettos don't bother me because it's just poor people that live there. Anyway, so here we are, and we see this machine, and it looks like a game. So we go on there and we start pushing buttons and pushing buttons and pushing buttons. I can't remember if it was me or Alice that kept pushing the red button. And the red button is the emergency button. You're calling for help. So anyway, it called the police. The police came and they're like, oh, these little kids, and then they don't know what, we don't know what's going on. We don't speak any English. We're like, why is the police here? We're just playing a game. We can figure it out. So maybe they're trying to help us, figure out how to play this game. So they take us to like the front desk, and I guess they told him, oh, it's the African dad that brings kids here. And so they knew my dad because it's the school that he went to, and they called him. And so he came and spoke to the police and then took us home. Of course, he was pissed, but that's the short of the story.
Yep, and just so you know, he gave him a really good lecture about that. So life was, we were adjusting. We started, picking up the language a little bit, and we would encounter many more cultural adjustments and things like that.
So wait,
But
did you guys not
it was
speak
also
English?
isolating, right?
Babe,
Because
did you
if
guys
you can
not?
imagine, for most of the interactions that we had in our daily lives, we
Babe, did
didn't
you
really
guys
say.
not speak in English? You said, language adjustment. Were you talking to the police or to the fire department in Kenya, Rwanda, or in French? How were you guys communicating?
We didn't. We just stood there, and people would have a conversation about us, and we had no idea what they were saying. So most of the time, at least for me, I was, people thought I was mute for a while, because I didn't say much and I didn't speak. And so, and plus, I was dealing with some heavy stuff. We had just come from a really intense situation, and then, like sometimes people would say a joke, and they would crack a joke, and they would laugh, and I would be the only one sitting there not laughing. And or like somebody would say something to me, and I would smile. I have no idea whether they're asking me a question. I have no idea whether they are, making fun of me. I have no idea. So I would just smile and keep going. So yeah, in our new environment, we started to feel, the worst, the chaos wasn't there, but it was still a little isolating because, our interactions were very limited. Like when we got home, we had so much to say to each other because we could communicate with each other. But when we were away from home, it was mostly like just us keeping to ourselves. And so one of the things we did was we started a soccer club, because at that time there were a few things going on. At that time, it was really expensive to do club soccer. And then we also were like, this would be a good thing to bring the community and kind of create a community around the sport, give us something to do, interact with other Africans and things like that. So we started Unified Stars. And from then on, we had something to do every Saturday. And, doing that, well, for one thing, it kept us busy in trying to figure out, we would eventually find sponsors that would help us set up the team and kind of take off some of the financial strain that we had. And then we would get people from all, the whole continent, across the continent, the Caribbean, and people in the US join the team. And every Saturday we had something to do. Every Saturday we had, something to look forward to. Like, at least for me, I mean, I love watching soccer, so it was like something for me to go and do. So it didn't feel so isolated. But one of the things that happened on the soccer team, which is why it was entertaining for me, there was this whole thing about eating fufu before you start playing a game. And so one day, we were at a game, and the game is about to start. There was one guy that never wanted to be subbed out. He wanted to play the full game, and he wanted to play the whole thing. So the coach put him in. He went and started playing. 5 minutes later, he starts raising his hand like, "Hey, can you sub me out? Can you sub me out? Sub me out?" And so the coach was like, "What? Okay, sure. Let me find somebody." And so they subbed him out. He came back to the sidelines, and he was just out of breath. And we heard him say, "Oh, I shouldn't have had the fufu that I had before coming to the game." So it became a thing. Hey, make sure you don't eat, you eat your fufu after the game instead of before the game, And so that was, light moment and things that happened. But yeah, eventually I would go to Northwestern for college. And, at that time, I spoke English, but, I still didn't understand some things. And it was actually, considering where I had been 4 years before, and to go to Northwestern for me was a huge honor, and something I never expected would happen for me. And I actually, met some really, really good people while I was there. I met some really good friends, met some people that would be in my life for a really long time, and maybe, during my lifetime, they would be on my journey, and they would continue to be on my journey. So while I was there, I tried to find a community and find ways to kind of adjust, right? Because this is the biggest adjustment for me as well. So while I was there, we started the African Student Association. Northwestern had never had one, so we started that to kind of create a community around the African students that were there. And we'd go in and tear our fufu up whenever we wanted to. Have our isombe if we wanted to, have our plantains and things like that, and then put on events and kind of create a community around that. And so that was great. That was a good time actually. But Claude, what happened with the team when I left?
Oh, the team kept going. We went on to, we played for many years, won a bunch of trophies, a bunch of medals, and it just kept going generation to generation. So the team just kept getting younger and younger. So those of us who were like really young at some point became like the oldest people on the team, after like hundreds of players had gone through the team. And a part of the story is, one of the reasons why we formed it was really expensive to play club soccer, but there was so many talented players, especially from Africa and the Caribbean, that just weren't playing. And so we put the team together, and ended up getting sponsorship and everything, and we're able to participate. So
were there no African communities at large that played soccer? And for those of you guys, for us, soccer, that's like a foreign word. We use football, even though football American is that funny looking ball. So
that's right.
We had to call it soccer.
Yeah.
The college years.
There were so we were the first Rwandan family to arrive in Nashville. So there weren't that many. There were no other Rwandans really. So most of our interactions were with people from other countries. And I think just having the team in place, kind of, you get to meet new people and things like that, and also, enjoy a soccer game if you're into that. So it was it was multi-purpose. Like it served many purpose, and kind of, you had the parents screaming on this side, "Hey, that's my kid!" If like they got tackled and stuff like that. And so it was a good time had by all. But along the way, I would meet very, very special people. I met some very, very special people.
Did you get a chance to participate during those soccer games, being a cheerleader or things like that? Or that was just not your thing?
I did not cheerlead, but I did not cheerlead, but I was, is it wrong? I was on the sidelines coaching the guys. I was telling them, "Hey, you need to score more goals. What is this? We're it's 2-0 and we're down. So I was walking back and forth on the sidelines and really into the game. And there was an actual official coach. I was just yelling at the guys and saying,
one of those type of fans.
Yeah, one of those type of fans that are like, "Hey, Reds, you need to you need to score. And what is this? We didn't come to watch you lose." And so I would say things like that, but it was all in fun, all in support of the team.
So the college years, I guess I just want to know, you did all these community things, but did you just focus on America, even like beyond your college years? Did you just forget where you came from and were like, I'm just gonna do things here in America, stuff like that?
It was impossible to forget where we came from, because the years of 90 to 94 had been such a, we were young, right? But we had been basically catapulted into being adults and having to make adult decisions, life or death decisions. So, I understood that my story was maybe different from my classmates or the other people that I met. But I also didn't want that to be something that hangs over my head. So I tried my best to get involved in different events and different community initiatives and things like that. And I remember when I got to Northwestern, it was about 3 months after the shooting of the unarmed woman. I think her name is Latanya, I can't remember the last name, but it was 1999, and that had happened 3 years before that. And so when I got to Northwestern, the Black community there was doing awareness training, and kind of, I think she had been shot while she was reaching for her cell phone. And so we would get a lot of training and being told how to behave in front of the police. Like if we were traveling and we got pulled over by the police, this is what you do. You know, you do everything they ask you, and don't reach for anything. You know, keep your hands where they can see it, and things like that. So all of that happened, and it reminded me of the one time you came home, Claude, and you were very distraught. And this was the years when we were still, you know, I was still at home.
In high school years.
Yep. And you came home distraught, and we asked you what had happened to you, and what did you tell us?
So I was at a phone booth. So this is back in the day when we had like pay phones. You go to the pay phone, you put in a coin, and you know, you call whoever you want to call. I was at a pay phone, and the policeman came, and they just all of a sudden they grabbed me and slammed me on the floor. And you know, they started to handcuff me and frisk me, and I mean, just like, you know, with their knees down on, you know, like where I was, like I couldn't move at all or anything like that. And I don't know what they were looking for. They just looked at me after they did all that, and they said, "Oh, it's not him." And then they released the handcuffs, and they let me go.
So they handcuffed you before they could identify you?
Yeah, they didn't ask for anything. They didn't stop me. They didn't ask for ID. They didn't, you know, even identify themselves. They just came, you know, roughed me up, slammed me down, and, you know, and then asked no questions. They just, you know, sent me off.
Yeah, and that was my first encounter with something like that. And so, you know, our dad had a conversation with us and said, you know, when you're interacting with the police, please behave, you know, don't do anything crazy. And this was like maybe 4 years after the Rodney King incident had happened in LA. So, you know, things were kind of fresh still. And so when I got to Northwestern, when we were getting that training, it reminded me of my brother's situation he had encountered. And so in my mind, I started to think, oh my God, this whole police brutality thing is a big deal in America. And so whereas we had been in a place where, you know, there was bombs and hunger and color and all that stuff, we were now dealing with new challenges here, which included police brutality. But and racism. Yeah, and racism and things like that. You know, you would hear, hey, you know, if you're going to ask for a job, these are the things you should say, and this is how you should behave, because, you know, there is racism in the country, and you may or may not get a job just because of the skin, the color of your skin. So we started to learn about those things, but eventually things would get really, really bad in the Great Lakes region of Africa. So that encompasses the Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania. So that whole area was going through a lot of instability, and many people were dying and things like that. And that would lead us, and there were, you know, many people fleeing the area and coming to the US, or, you know, going to other places. And that led us to found Aglan. And when we founded Aglan, we wanted to create a medium for people to be able to tell their own stories. At this time, the Rwandan government was not allowing people to be able to tell their own stories. It was there was this whole thing about there was a genocide, and it was a genocide against the Tutsi, and only against the Tutsi, and only those people could mourn their dead, or could even speak up about that. So there was a whole thing about, so if you had any other kind of survival.
They're still doing that today. Okay. They haven't changed. Okay. They keep going.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I'll go ahead and say this. For me, my total and full belief is that there wasn't one Rwandan person who was in the country who is not a survivor. Everyone who was in that country is a survivor.
I believe that too, 100%.
Yeah.
Even if it was 15 minutes and you just escaped, you are a survivor, because every person was targeted by either the extremist Hutus who were killing people or the RPF. that was wiping out everybody, but also specifically targeting Hutus in certain places and committing its own genocide against Hutu people.
Yep, there was not one person, not one person. That's my total and full belief. And so if we are going to be able to now move forward, right, and have true reconciliation in Rwanda, then we need to create a medium for everyone to be able to share their own stories. That was a driving factor behind the founding of AGLAN. But we also wanted it to be done in the framework of peace, justice, and prosperity. That is the mission of AGLAN. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring about peace, justice, and prosperity. And we thought those three things, if they are there, then people can be able to live their lives and thrive. So we started doing a lot of advocacy work.
There's also the Congo piece. Congo was a really big piece of it.
Yep, and Congo was a really big piece of it because a lot of the instability was in the Congo, and it was impacting both Rwandans and Congolese. And so the work that AGLAN was doing was there was a coalition of organizations that came together, and we really did like a lot of advocacy to try and change, maybe bring a little bit of stability in that whole area. And so I would do that in the years that followed after I graduated and stuff like that. And then at the same time, there was this new movement that was growing of Black Lives Matter. And there are parallels to be drawn between the two, right? If you think about, what I will say is state-sanctioned brutality, right? So the police brutality, I mean, that is the police that is being brutal towards Black people in the U.S., whether you're a Black woman or a Black man, right? But then also in Rwanda, the Rwandan government, takes the time to invest resources into chasing people who dare speak differently than they speak, right? So if you advocate for something, they will find a way to silence you. I myself have been a subject of that. I've been written about, and by researchers apparently, who look to distort my story a little bit and try to paint me as this person who
they call you a fake survivor,
right?
So basically, like, your story is not valid, and these self-styled so-called researchers are, basically trolls paid by the government of Rwanda. Yeah. There are some that are inside of the country and they're official, you can recognize them. And there are some that do it outside of the country, in their various little circles. And so they want to invalidate your story by telling your story themselves. And so anyway, I just wanted to complete what you were saying about,
you can even throw in the very latest where they actually call us, especially you, a genocidal, or they even go as further as calling us like we've what is it? It's like drinking being breastfed by a genocide's milk. How do you even translate that? But it's some It's some really negative. It's just like stripping off your humanity, making you become a worthless person, let alone someone who's like a human being. And we've seen a whole lot of being written, especially right now that it's gotten even worse to anyone who does advocacy work. And you can imagine back in those days when they literally were actually looking for people to align with the lies that they were telling the whole world. I thought I would add that to what you were saying, B.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and when you do advocacy work, right, there is a goal that you're trying to meet, and there is, because I mean, one of the things I think you said in my intro, Freeman, was just my continuation of contributing to the betterment of the world, right? That is one thing that I do. I do work to do that. And every initiative that I'm involved in, I do that, right? I want to be able to leave a place better than I found it, by contributing, whether it's my skills, my talents, by just my presence, right, being there.
Yes.
And so, the Aglan advocacy work really had the Rwandan government sideways and really trying to silence us and, sending us death threats and things like that, to try to make sure that we don't continuously to speak on that. And so, for anyone who's ever done advocacy work, I'm sure you can relate to this. And even if you haven't, you can relate to this in some way, and understand, when you're called to do the work, you have to step into the work and actually do it. And sometimes you will come across people that are going to try to silence you and make sure that you don't speak. And every time I think about how hard it was for us, to get from one place to another place, especially when the genocide started. The threat against our lives, and then to be told that I'm a fake genocide survivor makes no sense. I mean,
by people who never were even there.
Exactly.
They fabricate the story from, they came, they took over the country, they then decided this is how we're going to tell the story of what happened to the people who were inside of the country and leave our voices out. And that's called twistery. Twistery is dominant voices telling their own stories, fabricating history, leaving out the voices that are inconvenient to them, and basically erasing them. So basically, that's the attempt by these so-called researchers. And let me say this: these researchers, if there was a line of people who were getting into a building and they have research credentials, if they got to the door, the bouncer would just grab them by the the collar and throw them out and say, no, you are not a researcher, because they do not meet any of the standards of research.
Hey, Claude, I think this will be quite befitting. One of those so-called researchers, we've met him when he was running at the U.S. Congress. Remember back in those days, and he was trying to talk to us in Kinyarwanda. And when you approached him and talked to him, he was just running, and trying to portray himself as the so-called what was it, like a representative, talking about some nonsense actually, at the Congress.
Yeah, he came in to try to deny the mapping report and the story of the mapping report. We were testifying in Kambale's in the audience. Kambale was one of the people who was giving testimony about the atrocities in the Congo. And thank goodness HMD is always there. Got the clips, and so he starts to threaten and speak right back to him. Say, say, what do you want to? What are you trying to say to me? Say it in English and say it loud, because he was trying to be really threatening. And then he takes off running. But let's go back to this story. So, what else? Other than challenging racism. Challenging these so-called researchers, being a part of Aglan. I've seen some immigration things, for example, that you've worked on. You want to talk about that, and maybe we can transition and go to listen to, take the questions from the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the when you're doing advocacy work, especially for a region like ours, right? You do have people that resettle in the U.S. And who encounter, immigration challenges and things like that. And so being able to advocate on their behalf was something that was important to me. And I participated in that and kind of tried to help bring about change within the challenges of immigration in the U.S. And so, keeping that in mind and knowing, so there is trying to solve the root of the problem back home in the region, but there's also taking care of the people that are here. And that can be done through the various organizations that serve refugees to kind of help them resettle, and immigrants as well. But it also can be done, in trying to shift policy on immigration and figure out a solution to the immigration problem that we have today in the U.S. So yeah, those were some of the efforts that I participated in. And people ask me, why are you telling your story now, right?
I wanted to ask you that actually too. That was in the queue. I'm quite. I think it's almost like asking the teeth of a chicken when you see the mouth open. So it's literally a translation from a Kinyarwanda of proverbs. But for real, why now?
That is because, so in the past, it hasn't been safe for us to come forward and tell our stories, right? There is a whole coordinated effort that goes on to try and demolish the person, right? And as soon as they try to speak up and tell their own story. And given that the driving factor for founding Aglan was to create space for people to be able to tell their own stories, I felt like this was timely. The time is now. I really do think we are at a time where, given our collective effort, we could chart a path forward for Rwanda that is inclusive of everyone without leaving any voices out. And if we can do that, then we will have succeeded as Rwandan descendants, no matter where we are. So that is why I'm doing that today. That is, plus, there is a so-called researchers that do try to take my voice away from me. And I didn't want that to happen anymore. I wanted to tell the story in my own words and be able to tell what I did endure during that time and kind of take my power back in a way. It is also restorative justice, in telling my story, I am able to receive some form of justice, given the disparaging things that have been written about me. And so I wanted to come forward today and do that. And also, I'm hoping that in hearing my story and in hearing what I went through and the many challenges that I encountered, that you will find you will be inspired. For anyone who's in the audience or listening to this, you will be inspired to take some form of action and try to continue to better our world.
There also is another thing to these researchers in the government of Rwanda, and not just the government of Rwanda, oppressive systems always do this. They don't want people who live the experience to tell their experiences. They want your voice out. And so it's not only to just fabricate your story, it's also to intimidate others from sharing your story or from sharing their own stories. And so all of that, when you come out here and you break the silence, as we always say, you break the silence, you shatter the mold, you own your story. It's your history. But before we transition to the audience, to interacting with the audience, I do want to ask the studio. I want to kind of start this on a lighter note. Yes, to run this video and tell us what was happening here in this video.
Baby crying baby. Yes.
I'm hoping
It's playing actually.
Go ahead.
Well, when I'm not doing advocacy work or other things, I do like to have a good time. And I think I was doing a little bit of charades there, maybe, and playing a game with my siblings and cousins. And so, it was a good moment, just enjoying myself. I'm sure in watching it, you're wondering what in the world is she doing. But yeah, just a little bit of, playing a little bit of charades at home.
All right. So then this time, I think we can jump into the remarks by the audience. I'm wondering if the studio has the comments from the audience. If not, we can just quickly, take a peek at what we're seeing. I see the comments. We do have the comments. We've got a lot of people that are in the audience greeting you, Bea, Odette, Rekatete, shout out to all of you, Jean Mahire, Kagoma Egg. I'm just jumping through it. Delphian, Eva Paz, Mugisha Tam, Sujusta, Gloria Wishema, Pacifique, Gasser Leons, Patrick Rugava, So many people here. Clement Bawazi, Be Blessing, Virginie, Christine, Donatien, Alpha Omega, so many, Kenzo Catindo. So I'm just skipping around, Marie Jose. And then we've got some comments here. One from Kambale saying, I'm sorry that you have to relive this today. I thank you for your courage to tell your story and spread the light for all of us to get the courage to continue to fight for justice. And then we've got something from Michelle Mimana saying, that's horrible, Gatebuke. Stay strong and keep bold. Keep shaming those RPF blind hooligans in Hore who call you fake survivors. Then we've got Kami Rina saying, thank you for sharing your story. Shout out to you, Kami. Concord Musoni, only from Gatenga, big bro. Says, sad to hear, overwhelming, terrible stories. Keep it up. And then there's some comments here. Gasore Leon saying that the Hutu militias were killing Rwandan Tutsis. And then there's a lot of people who are saying sorry for the experiences that you went through. And I believe, I'm not seeing any questions. I don't know if anybody in the studio is seeing questions, but there's also Clement saying, oh man, this right there is another incredible, humbling and funny as hell story. We sure survived for a reason. As Free said, the Most High has greater plans for us. And let me see what else we have. I believe that is, for the most part,
more like feedbacks.
A lot of things. Yeah, and there's state-sponsored gangsterism is the link between both experiences. So the racism, this came from Natasha Abingene, saying that, basically what happens in Rwanda and what happened in Rwanda and what's happening in the region is state-sponsored gangsterism, and that's what's happening here in the US also with, the attacks and, killings of unarmed, Black people and people of color. And then there's more stories about thanking you for writing your own history. I believe that is it for the comments. Unless there's anything else, maybe we can, wrap this up. Is there anything else from the studio, or can we?
I'm checking right now.
Go ahead and...
Actually, there's one question here for Beatrice. It came straight from our WhatsApp line. It says, "Hello, Queen Beatrice. It is such an amazing experience to see you being the sister of Mr. Gatebuke. We've seen him for so many years. We never knew that there is such an amazing woman behind the work that he's doing. What would you tell a young woman like myself right now? I still haven't had the courage to come out and tell my story. What drives you every day, especially when you see how your name get drowned in the bucket, in the mud, and try to dehumanize you on a daily basis? What would you tell young women like ourselves who are still somewhat afraid to come forward and share our story?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I will start by saying this. When I wake up every morning, the first thing I think about is, what can I do today to help make a world a better place? That is my first thing. So I look at my talents, I look at my skills, I look at my community, and then I decide this is one thing I'm going to do today that's going to contribute to the betterment of our world. And I think when you start to look at the world that way, things become lighter, right? All the negativity and all the things that may be coming at you don't faze you, because you know that in your own mind, you are actually serving your purpose, right? You came here into the world with a mission, and you're fulfilling that mission. And for as long as you're fulfilling that mission, nothing can touch you. Nothing can touch you. And so knowing that and understanding that, and also, starting small, pick something small, whether it's telling your story, whether it's telling your story to a small group of people first, and then eventually coming forward and saying it on a larger stage. Pick something small, because there is a saying in America that says hardships often prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. And if you can keep that in mind and understand that the hardships you experience or may be experiencing at this time are actually here to help you get more in alignment with the purpose that you're supposed to be serving in this world, it really does help you. So I would encourage you to come forward and share your story, because if you don't, that voice is going to be missing. If you don't, that story will never be told. So have the courage to come forward and actually share your story.
We have another question from Patricia Servant, one of our Congolese sisters. Thank you for all the work that you do, Patricia, for the region of Central Africa, the Great Lakes region of Africa, and also the work that you do for the whole continent. You do great work. And she says, what advice would you give to those in the same situation back home, and what keeps you going? So 2 questions. One is the advice, and the second is what keeps you going.
The advice I would say is that, start looking at things differently, right? Don't look at what the world can do for you. Look for what you can do for the world. And once you figure that out and step into it, you will still receive a lot of assistance, and you'll be able to do something. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a lot of resources. I think when we started doing the advocacy work, we have 0 resources. So it takes just starting. And as soon as you start, you will be able to keep going. And it's very disheartening to hear that people are still in 2021. People are still in those conditions. It's very disheartening to hear. So it will be good for whether it's through telling your story, or maybe doing some volunteer work, or whatever it is, whatever form that you choose to serve the world. If you can figure that out and get started doing that, it will help. So that's the advice that I would give. And what keeps me going is to know that every day when I go to close my eyes, I have done something to help ease someone's pain, to help contribute to the world, to make it a better place in one form or another. And that keeps me going. But I also have a lot of family support, a lot of friends. I receive a lot of love. A lot of people do love me. And that truly, truly does keep me going. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
And what would keep them going? That maybe,
I think, if there is a way, wherever you are, right, to find a way to create a community around whatever cause that you would like to get involved in is important. I think having community support or people of like minds to help you get started and keep you going is really important.
There's also, I think the question's been repeated maybe. I don't know, but people are asking, how are you related?
I did see that, but I kind of ignored it too.
In case you didn't know, this is my brother.
Is he your actual brother?
He is my brother. Yes, he is my brother.
You don't have the same manners though.
Say what?
You don't have the same manners. I thought he was adopted, actually. For so long, I thought he was just an adoptee. I never knew that.
You never know.
Not at all. He is my brother, and we just like brothers and sisters do. We've had good many fights and a good many times. I remember when I was in primary school. I used to be like, hey, I have an older brother. You can't beat me up because my big brother is going to beat you up. So I always had he always had my back in that way. I would be like, yep, nope, you can't touch me, because if you do, my brother and his friends are going to come get you. So yeah.
There's also a quick story I want to share, and then we can go to your closing remarks. When I was in primary school, they asked us at one point to like stand up based on, and say what ethnic group you belong to, whether you were Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa, and like a bunch of kids didn't know what they were. Some people knew they were Hutus, others knew they were Tutsis. And, I got up, I was like, I'm Christian. and everybody laughed. And then they were like, I went home, I was like, hey, what's wrong with being Christian? And Bay was like, so I told them the story, and Bay's like, oh, Claude, you're so stupid. You should have told me you're Catholic. So the parents had a really good laugh. But anyway, just wanted to share a little bit of that. But do you mind, if you don't mind, please, what else would you like to add as we close out this broadcast? And really appreciate your time and sharing today.
Yeah, so I wanted to thank, the various organizations that sponsored this program. I wanted to thank HMG Studios for putting this on. I wanted to thank everybody behind the scenes in helping make it today happen. And I also wanted to thank everybody who's in the audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me today. I do feel a little bit restored by sharing my story, so I thank you for that. I also want to say that if you are somewhere wondering what to do next, take a look at the world. There are so many things that we can do in our world. And if you want to do something specifically to Rwanda, think about sharing your story. Think about, stepping into what you can do for the world, and contact Agland and let him know that you're interested in sharing your story, and let us begin that conversation, and let us together chart that course towards a more inclusive Rwanda. Because today we say no to hatred and we say yes to love. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the time, sharing your story. It's very generous. Many people it's really hard to speak publicly. And, the added intimidation that you talked about keeps people in what we call the hall, and they don't want to come out of the hall and tell their story. And, I hope you sharing your story encourages others to also share their stories, because we were all inspired by others to share our stories. And the other thing is, when you tell your story, you're making a contribution to the truth. The truth is an expression of love. And you're saying we choose love over hate, truth over lies, truth over fabrications is love. And so thank you for contributing to love. And lastly, love is justice. Love is just. It's, does not exploit. And we know millions of people are being exploited in the Great Lakes region of Africa, especially in the Congo. In Rwanda, there's so much injustice. The contribution to justice, eventually getting justice, is important. Survival stories are a major component to having, to really achieving justice. Like Dr. Mukwege said, we cannot build lasting peace over mass graves.
Right.
And we cannot build lasting peace without truth and accountability and justice. And so by sharing your story, you're also being, those who watched it are witnesses. And when you're a witness, you're responsible. So now your responsibility as a witness is share the story. Do not compromise the truth. Stand with the people who are in pain and support them. Be compassionate and be loving and be empathetic. And eventually change will come and things will be better, not only for us as Rwandans or even, as refugees or immigrants, but also in the region. So I thank you for your time. I also want to thank the sponsors. Can't go without that. Friends of the Congo, Black Star News, Aglan, and HMG Studio. Over to you, Freeman. Thank you.
And I hate the ending. I really do hate the ending, but Claude, thank you, my brother. We fought sidelines for so many years, and it is so humbling to see the Queen in front of cameras right now, and knowing how much work she has done and she continues to do on a daily basis, not to mention the tears, the sweat, and some of those backdrop agonies that we go through that you guys never get a chance to know. But we do have such an amazing team of guys and girls behind us every single day, and today is no exceptions. I really want to say to all of those, to all of you out there who are still yet to come forward and to write your own story, your own way, your own words, with not one single word left behind. I really want you to see Queen Beatrice today. Look at her, look at how she exceptionally expressed herself with such royalty in herself. Look at it. We have all of that within us. We have all of that within us. And I just want to tell all the haters out there, you guys got it coming. We are here to stay. We will tell our story. We will actually put you out there. We are reclaiming our lives today. And I really want to encourage each and every one of you who are still giving the permission for these perpetrators to demonstrate that they have power over you, or to just simply put their legs on your neck. Take back your own lives. Take back your own lives. Write your own story. We are here. Aglan is here. The Queen is here. So many of us are here just so that you can be able to have the privilege of reclaiming your own lives. So I also want to really say thank you to Beatrice today. Thank you to my brother Claude. Thank you for all those of you who have made this broadcast possible. And apologies for a little bit of a glitch. We started a little bit late, but as always, our teams of broadcasters and distributors, we are cool like that, guys. And there's nothing, there's no better blessings than having our own platforms where we can tell
Amen.
our own story, our own ways. Yes,
Amen.
Claude.
I know that we said we were wrapping up, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all the upstanders, all the people who have put their lives on the line,
Yes.
took a risk. There's so many in our story. We talked about the neighbors who smuggled us out, the ones who sheltered us, the driver, the people who intervened at the various points that we would never even be able to recognize, those who sheltered us, so many. This has happened to thousands and thousands of people. It's happening today. And those who are speaking up are also being upstanders, because when you speak up for somebody that is hurting, you're letting the world know. And our thing is, let the world know. The world must know. And I didn't want to stop without thanking them, but also to thank the audience.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And one of our slogan that we use each and every day, we will let the world know, just like Claude has just alluded to. And we make no apologies about what we do. And we absolutely will not respect you, try to shut us down or muzzle us or whatever it is that you think you are going to do or you are attempting to do. We won't have that. In Kenya, Rwanda, there is a saying that goes like, Burya sibuno. Claude or Queen, if you guys can translate to the best words, Burya sibuno.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. So guys, know that times have changed. Because today we are here to stay, and we are restoring our humanity. We are restoring our own dignity, and we make no apologies to nobody. And with that in mind, thank you so much to our networks who are carrying this message. Thank you so much for those of you guys checking us out from the social medias. And those of you who are listening to us, we are super grateful for this moment, and very privileged to share such an amazing story from Queen Beatrice Gatebuke herself. And guys, just look forward for more stories like this. Many, many, many untold stories, either from Rwanda, from the Great Lakes of Africa, even from Africa, because we are literally coming to all of you. And with that in mind, thank you so much. We are super grateful. And I am Freeman Singirankabo with HMG Network. Until next time, so long.